All right, I'm happy to have on Jess Kleinschmidt. If you follow baseball at all, you already know who she is, but she's a great follow on Twitter. If you don't follow her already, I highly recommend it. How have you been, Jess? First of all, that's a question I'm asking all of my interviewees because it's that time. I mean, it's 2020. You got to ask how people are doing. How have you been through this whole pandemic?
I'm actually, all things considered, doing okay. I mean, I
Yeah.
launched 2 shows. I covered a baseball season. I feel like I'm probably one of the lucky ones.
Yep.
So I'm very, very blessed and thankful that I still have a job through all of this, but it's not easy. Certain days are easier than others and other days are harder than others. But my family's healthy.
Yep.
Like I said, I have a job still. My friends are doing well. So life is pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, I actually had, I don't know if you know Steve Buckley from The Athletic. We had a long conversation in episode 1 of this podcast about just kind of, this is a year to reflect on everything that you have. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
if you lost there's people out there who have lost their jobs, they lost loved ones, they lost their health. If you're in that position where you have those 3 things, then you're doing just fine, all things considered.
Doing amazing, sweetie, if you have those things.
Yeah. So last time we talked, actually, it was on my former baseball podcast, and you were
How long ago was that?
I was gonna ask you that same question. I'm not good with remembering times.
I got the NBC job, right?
I think it was too. I think it was actually not long before it though. So I think probably like 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I just had my 2-year anniversary November 12th. So
Okay.
that's pretty good for Jess's standards as far as relationships go. But yes, I think it was right before I moved from Reno when I was on your show.
Okay. So you were at Cut 4, and then shortly afterwards you joined NBC Sports Bay Area. So we're technically colleagues now, which is great. It's crazy how life works.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
How has that transition been for you? Was it a smooth one in the beginning, or was it challenging? How exactly did it go?
So the move itself was really easy. I got so lucky. NBC took care of me and all of that. One of those things where because I moved here and it was like, wait, so the house worked out beautifully, the movers, everything worked out beautifully to the point where like, wait a second. So the move itself was really easy. And I'm only 3 hours away from my family if anything should go bad. So I have that going. But starting out the job was tough only because I'm used to a small town and I had to commute into work. I had to ride the train and the big city. And then I went from covering one sport to Bay Area for NBC has the most sports out of all the RSNs. So I was hitting the ground running. Right when I get there, of course, the Warriors are on their way to the finals. So I'm like, cool. All I know is Aisha Curry. So what am I supposed to do?
Lot to learn.
So I love the challenge of it. And that's ultimately why I left Cut 4. And I don't want to say I left Cut 4, but because they wanted to keep me and I wanted to stay there. It was like, I got to cover baseball with my best friends. It was the coolest gig ever. And they gave me a show and everything like that. But I wanted the challenge. And probably the most challenging thing you can do is go from covering 30 teams to the A's full time, which I prayed for. I always wanted to cover the A's. So the fact that I get to do that is fantastic. And the Giants, like 2 stark different teams, different organizations. Yep. And then, the Warriors and the Niners were on their way to the Super Bowl and like all these cool things. So looking back at it now, it was phenomenal, but in the moment it was tough. I'm not going to lie. At the very beginning, it was tough, but I thrive on people doubting me and me doubting myself, of course. So it was good and it was tough. And I ultimately I'm glad that I made the decision because it's been really fun.
What's been the most rewarding experience so far? I know you probably have so much more you want to accomplish, but to this point, what are you most proud of that you've done?
I'm glad you asked that because people think like, oh, she's set. And it's like, sure. I could do this for the rest of my life and like be stagnant, but that's not my mentality. I think so far is just honestly the platform I've built. I don't just write about sports. Like being a woman in the industry, you have extra pressure and and like I have to remind myself like I'm going to fuck up. It's going to happen, but I don't want the women watching me. I want the women to watching me knowing that they're going to fuck up too, especially in this industry. Typos, as you know, happen
all the time. People don't realize like you're not going to be perfect. It's going to go through an editor too. Like and they're going to miss it. And then it's not a perfect process.
Exactly. And so it's just different for women. And I was actually just having this discussion with my boss the other day, and it's just like, I have an extra target on me. You've seen my mentions, Justin.
Yes,
you would
I
never
sure
get those,
have.
you would never get those mentions because you're a man.
Right.
And it's just different. But I'm not going to complain about it. I'm just gonna be like, cool. I'll dunk on the Twitters every now and then, but I have to move on. So I feel like developing a platform and reminding myself that it's bigger than just a job has been rewarding and challenging, and a lot of pressure, but not on them, on myself, because I want to make sure that no woman is scared to start, not just in this industry, but any industry where they feel like they don't belong. So that alone, that's like the bigger picture. But I mean, little moments like covering, Twitter flew me out to the World Series last year. That was really cool. Covering 2 postseasons, one from home, one actually at the postseason. Watching the A's win a wild card game was pretty cool.
Hey,
like, because I'm an A's fan, so like over the years, like, damn, dude. And working with Dallas Braden was probably a cool moment, just because I remember looking up to him, and now he's not only a colleague, but he's a dear friend of mine. And people that you used to look up to are now asking you for advice. Like when we hired Dontrell Willis, he was like, I can't wait to learn from you. And I was like, what? Like, what world am I living in? So just stuff like that. I feel like the stuff that's bigger than sports is the stuff that really kind of hits home. And then knowing that my mom and my family can see me back in Reno because they get the channel is really cool. But the overall is just like being a woman and developing a platform to do all that is great. But you're right. There's so much more I want to accomplish.
I'm glad you brought up being a woman in the industry, because this is a conversation we had. We had a pretty long conversation about it on the last podcast, but it's one that doesn't get old because it's still a very important topic today. The fact that for whatever reason is like a taboo thing of like, there's people out there who will see a woman talking sports and they'll have this reaction that almost like they want it to be complimentary, but it's very like the way they get it across is just very, very, like, it's not complimentary at all. Like,
yeah,
I feel like
don't
that
say
happens.
I'm good for a girl. Just say I'm
exactly.
Good.
That's what I'm saying. So you started that podcast, Cork'd Up, with Rachel Luba, who's Trevor Bauer's agent. I think she's Yasiel Puig's agent, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Agent, Carlos Gomez, yeah.
Okay, so the reason I bring that up is because you two are phenomenal role models for women in this industry, and I think it's important for any woman, if they're listening to this and they want to break in, they should be listening to you because you've done it. They should be listening to Rachel Luba because she's done it. I think she was just on the 30 under 30 for Forbes.
Yeah,
that's incredible. So what advice would you have to those women who might be having doubts about themselves entering this industry? What would you give?
Well, it's bigger than the industry, Justin. I feel like women have so much pressure on themselves. Like I have such bad imposter syndrome. You could lay all the shit that I've accomplished on a piece of paper, and I feel like that's not me. I didn't do all those things. Right. So I feel it's more or less saying F the world. You have to find out who you really are. And it's so easy to say, but so difficult to execute. And so the number one thing I always tell people, they're like, oh, what advice do you have for women to start in the sports industry? And I say, don't do it. Only because I want to see their reaction. Okay. Half of the girls will be like, oh, okay. The other half, my girls, will say, fuck you, Jess, I'm going to do this. I should have asked if I'm allowed to cuss on this, but it's fine.
Absolutely you can.
Okay, yes. Cool. And also not just because it's a tough industry. This goes beyond just like women, because my schedule's crazy. If I'm in the middle of dinner and I need to do a one-on-one with Yasiel Puig, I have to do it right then and there. I can't just be like, oh, Yasiel Puig can like chill for a bit. I have to wait for this. So it's just like, it's tough. And the more and more I continue to do that, the more opportunities are presented, and that's going to ruin your social life. My dating life isn't great. I mean, it's not like it's not great. It's just hard to date. It's hard to,
of course, yeah,
make friends. And I needed a Rachel Luba in my life beyond just the podcast. Like, she just gets me and I get her. And it's just because we're in this unique industry, unique situations where we do have women looking up to us. So it's more or less about being true to who you are, and you have to be authentic. It's so important. Definitely. Because in this world where everybody's fake as fuck and they're trying to be the next Katie Nolan, don't even be the next Jess Kleinschmidt. Right. Be the first you. And that's when I switched. That's when I noticed opportunities started opening up for me. when I stopped trying to be like Katie Nolan or trying to be like Susan Slusser or trying to be like Sarah Spain, I was like, this is exhausting trying to be them. And
It's
so
so
once
hard to do too, because you see
so,
their success and
yeah,
you're like,
and
oh, that's the spot I want to be in. But you
right.
kind of have to carve your own role. Otherwise, people are gonna be like, we already have a Sarah Spain. We already have a Jess Kleinschmidt.
Exactly. So think about
why do we need another?
Exactly. So think about it this way. If you're going through life and you're presenting who you think you should be and people are coming into your life, those people don't know who you actually are. Those opportunities don't know who you are. So it's like going through life with a fake ass resume and telling yourself to perform. Like, that's not fair to you. So it's just, finding who you really are. And, you really have to understand like the blood, sweat, and tears that goes in this industry. Like for me, I'm a college dropout. I didn't go to school. Like I'm not, but I'm not saying that means everybody should do that. I'm a firm believer in education. But I learned a different way, and you can't take no's to heart. You have to be like, okay, so this is a no. Let me figure out a way to go around it. So, and just like how Rachel and I view the game is different from a lot, not just of men, but just from different people. Cause I was raised around the game, and she was introduced to it, watching it from like Trevor Bauer time, UCLA and stuff like that. And we also we support one another, and we're very proud of each other's accomplishments. And that's so hard to find in other women. It shouldn't surprise you because women are crazy, but I
didn't say that.
No, we 100% are. Guys are dumb, women are crazy. It just is what it is.
That's a fair statement. Okay.
Yes. All my guy friends are like, yeah, we're stupid. I'm like, hey, well, you said it. We're crazy, so it's chill. But so I feel like it's about that. You want to find out who you really, really are, and you're not going to find it overnight. And I still don't know 100% who I am. I'm still discovering who I am, but that's the beauty part of the journey. And this industry will make you figure that out quickly. And so,
sure.
But I genuinely, you have to work hard. You have to network. You have to put so much content out there, even if you're not getting paid for it. Don't be too proud. Don't go on Twitter bitching and complaining about being a woman in the industry and not work, because then you're making us look bad. We know it's bad. We know it's bad. Just go out there and do it. Stop complaining, put your nose to the stone and grind, and take no shit. And when people, the stereotype will always be there, but we, like the women in my circle, my warriors, my queens, they're phenomenal. And I'm always available to the young women who are scared. I will talk to you on FaceTime. I'll talk to you on Twitter. I'll talk to you whatever. Send me an email. I'm very open about that stuff, but also don't waste my time. If you want my advice and you're not going to take it, or at least listen to it, then you don't belong in this industry. It's pretty simple. There's so many people that want to work here and work their asses off. Yep. And that's why
so competitive.
Yeah. So it's a lot. But it's possible,
Yeah. So obviously women have to put into the work, whether a man or a woman. You have to absolutely grind in this industry. There's no doubt about that. But say a woman's doing everything they can. Sometimes they don't get a fair shot compared to maybe the guy who's doing the exact same thing. I think that's pretty obvious. And if people overlook that, then they're just choosing to overlook it because it's clear. Yeah. What can men do on their side? This is a question I don't think is asked enough. What can men do to help the women in this industry out and not be one of those people who's kind of, just, I guess, doubting the women who have that ability? Like, what can we do to help them out?
Just be an ally and swallow your pride, dude. Yeah. Like, a lot of us didn't, like, I played baseball up until my sophomore year of high school. That's about the equivalent of a lot of guys that I work with. Mm-hmm. So don't say that we don't have the same resume when it comes to baseball, like, and whatever. So it's also just like, we have to study it differently too, and just have our backs too. And especially if you see something bad happening, you see something inappropriate, fucking speak up, because a lot of times women are scared to say something. And, with the sexual harassment stuff these days, and I've been lucky, but not a lot of women have. But it's just like, have our backs without, you don't have to babysit us, but just, know that we're on the same playing field and we're doing the same thing. But we're just going to have to, unfortunately, be better. And this happened since Little League. I always had to be extra good. Kim Eng, way overqualified, but she had to be. And unfortunately, it had to do with her gender. I don't care what you say. It had to do with her gender.
Well, it's been like 20 years of her being in a front office. I mean,
30 years.
You can look at her resume. It's clear that this was long overdue.
Right. So it's just, and don't and know that we're struggling too, but don't treat us like we're babies. Like treat us like we're colleagues, we're on the same playing field, but just treat us with grace too, just because like we have it a little bit more difficult, but don't baby us. So, and be our allies, have our backs. And it's one thing I will give the credit to is the guys in my life before I found like female mentors, they were just phenomenal. And often I forget I'm a woman just because I just go there and do my job, what have you. And like, I try not to think about it too much. And hopefully I'm gaining respect from that, but just be on our side. You don't have to be our best friend. You don't have to be our boyfriends. You can just be there for us. And if you see something that we need help with, like listen to us, have our backs, because we'll do the same for you. Like one of my really good friends, Katie, she was in the A's clubhouse. I could tell she was nervous. So I took her underneath my wing and I was like, but I didn't baby her. I pushed her. She was nervous to talk to a player. I'm like, go fucking talk to him.
You have to.
Go get your interview. Go now. And she did. And, of course, did the girl thing. I took photos of it because she needs to put it on Instagram. But, it's just like that. And I want my guy friends to be like that too. And I have amazing male colleagues and friends that are just beyond amazing. And also don't be scared to ask a woman for advice. Like oftentimes I'll get a call from somebody who's a man. He's like, hey, I look up to you. You know how cool that is?
That is cool.
That's okay for a man to look up to me. That's amazing.
For sure.
And so it's just from that thing. But we don't hate men. That doesn't mean, feminism doesn't mean we hate men. Women working this industry doesn't mean we hate men. We love men. We have it a little bit different than they do.
So I think you handled Twitter trolls pretty well at this point. Has there been a point where it just weighed on your mental health and you wanted no part of social media? And does that still happen where it's like, this is too much. I gotta get out of here. Not even just being a woman. I think like everyone deals with those assholes on Twitter these days. You can't have a conversation anymore. How much has that weighed on your personal mental health?
Pretty bad. And that's another thing too. We should all admit that a stranger online made us upset. That's fucking normal. And we were just talking about, I do know I have it a little bit more different than everybody at work. Everybody at my job, there's no way in hell they get it as bad as I do. Maybe a couple of the players and stuff like that, but or former players, I should say. It's just I'm a target. But yeah, I probably delete Twitter once or twice a week off of my phone. Yeah.
Just to kind of clear your head a little bit?
Clear my head, but it's difficult just because, unfortunately, like all the content I'm creating, I have to tweet it out and stuff like that. But yeah, so it messes me up quite a bit. But I've had really bad situations where I've had to go to, my managers about things that people are saying that are, just lies. And then I've had really inappropriate people that, harassed me and I've had stalkers, I've been sexually harassed. So yeah, it's tough. But at the same time, as time goes on, I'm a little bit more numb to it. Not numb in a bad way. It's just like, okay, this person's obviously struggling. But recently this guy out of nowhere came at me. I wanted to say he was saying I was like sleeping with somebody on the Houston Astros. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? So I like quote tweeted him and dunked on him. And then somebody was like, hey, you should check out their profile. I looked at their profile and they were struggling. They were going through some shit. So I DM'd him.
That tends to be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And I DM'd him and I was like, hey, I feel really bad for what I said. It seems like you're going through some stuff. Turns out his mom recently died. And I just happened to be the first thing he saw on his timeline. And he came at me. And he apologized. We both did. And so, I mean, I'm not going to have that with everybody. Some people are just assholes. It is what it is.
Right.
That one in particular, I was like, you need to have some grace with them. And I would rather be a target than a lot of the young girls scared to get in the industry and everything like that. But I also want there to be an awareness that it happens, because you need to know like the bullshit that we deal with and why we have it a little bit more difficult. You wouldn't say half of the things you would to me to a guy at all. So, and it's tough. And I hate admitting that like stuff on the social media, it's beyond just getting trolled. Like, you see somebody, an ex-boyfriend on social media, and that's going to ruin your day. Or you're going to see like an inspirational quote from during the wrong time. And social media is a whole thing. But, you have your family who didn't vote for the same guy as you did on Facebook and all those things. But So social media is tough, but when you're a public figure, it's a little bit more tough. And then I often overthink things, and I worry that somebody's going to misconstrue something I say and everything like that. So it's tough, but it's okay to admit when a stranger online pisses you off. But I'm a firm believer in just like deleting it and going about the rest of your day. I've done that before. During All-Star break, unless I'm actually at the All-Star game, I delete social media for
it can be a good choice. I mean, but you do have to
fantastic.
reflect. Yeah, you do have to reflect on a little bit. Like these people, I would say even like 90% of them, 95% of them don't have an avatar. They're not putting themselves out. They're scared. They know what they're doing. Like they're scared of being exposed for who they actually.
Yeah, one guy in particular was coming at me like crazy, and he's an A's fan. And he's like, I've never even heard of you. I was like, I literally have a press pass saying that I work for NBC Sports. I don't know. I don't care that you never heard of me. I'm supposed to be here.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when I went to Twitter, when I went to World Series with Twitter, people were really pissed off. I'm like, well, that's because they sent me, not you. Literally.
Exactly.
And so this guy was like, you're a star fucker. You're trying to fuck the whole team. And as time
such an easy thing to say. Like it's such an easy thing. Yeah.
What a good one. I'm glad you think I'm pretty and up to date a base, but okay. And so as time went on, you could tell like he put all of his information out, and as time went on, the worse he got, he kept being more and more anonymous. And I stalked this guy, but tried to figure out who he was. And he was a former firefighter in a neighboring county. And the moment he retired was when he started coming at me. And I was like, oh,
you got bored.
When you had like a job with like a prestigious job, you were really, fine. And then you retire, now you're awful. And so people even notice, like, wow, he went from putting his name out there to like, now it's a fake name and all this other stuff. So it's like, if you're going to come at me, at least be man enough to be who you actually are. Because if I'm going to take it, I'm at least going to be myself taking it, so it's just like that. So there's some scary things that happen. But at the end of the day, Twitter is the reason why I have this job at NBC. Twitter is the reason why.
It's a catch-22, yeah.
Yeah, I met Rachel Luba. I met some of my best friends on social media. I have a lot of work opportunities because of social media. So it's a lot of give and take. But I can't confidently say that it hasn't pissed me off every now and then, because it pisses me off at least twice a week.
Same. And I don't even deal with a percentage of what you deal with. Like my mentions, believe me, we all get them. Like I work in sports media, so I'm going to get some shit every now and then, but I'll look at yours and it's a dumpster fire.
That's what I say. Like I'll see one of my colleagues like, oh, they came at me with a typo. I'm like, oh.
That's it? Okay. You must be having a nice day.
One guy said I was fat and I'm dying alone. So go on with your typo.
It's terrible. You mentioned Rachel Luba. So I want to know, how did that relationship start, and how did you guys come up with this idea for this Cork'd Up podcast? Admittedly, I haven't listened to it. So if you want to talk about what it's about and everything, I know. I have listened to Bach Talk though, repping NBC a little bit, but I haven't listened to Cork'd Up yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, somebody the other day, both of my podcasts were on their Spotify top podcasts of the year. And I was like, fuck, dude, like I've made it. Like, that's dope. So Rachel and I met on Tinder. No, I'm just kidding.
That'd be a great story.
It'd be a great story. So I swear, so I believe in God. Like I swear God put Rachel in my life. So, I read this article on this girl and I was like, wait, how come I've never heard of her? And she had like only like 30 followers on Twitter. And I was like, oh, it's a fake account. There's like whatever. But she tweeted this article of her, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it was like really interesting. She's Trevor Bauer's agent. And I'm a huge Trevor Bauer fan. Him and I've like interacted online before. And I love him as a pitcher, but I love him so much more as a guy who creates content. Mm-hmm. And the reason why was because he was pissed off at the media twisting his words. And now, obviously, I'm a reporter. I do that. So here I'm thinking like, you know what? I think I could learn something from him. So I followed her on Twitter, instant follow back. She wasn't even trying to make it coy. And
I just want to say I didn't get the follow back. So
okay,
you might have to, I'm just saying I didn't get the follow back. So you must have been doing something right.
Yeah. So she DM'd me pretty quickly and she's like, hey, like, are you going to spring training? Trevor wants to have you on his podcast. And I was like, I didn't even know Trevor knew like who like I actually was. And she's like, no, he's a fan of you. He's like, he likes your stuff. I'm like, what?
Like, surreal. What? Yeah.
But then I was like, yeah, whatever. If I have time, I'll go on Trevor Bauer's podcast. Like I'm super busy. So now I was going to go to the Momentum House and like go on his podcast. And then like a few days later, before I get down there, she's like, actually, Taiki, who's the co-founder of Momentum with Trevor, mentioned you as possibly like co-hosting my podcast. They want me to start a podcast. And I was like, interesting. Okay. And I thought it would be like an audition, thinking there'd be like a bunch of us, right? And so I show up at the Momentum House, get a tour, I meet Trevor, everything like that, meet all of his people, see how they make all the content. It's really, really cool. And so her and I just sit down, and it was supposed to be like a 30-minute conversation. We ended up talking for 2.5 hours about everything, sports, whatever. Our chemistry was instant. It was so weird. I like literally walked in the house and hugged her. I was like, I think this is going to work out well. So Trevor liked it. Trevor liked the dynamic. He liked our chemistry, and like I could talk about what it's like in the media covering the sport. When she, of course, agency, and like it's mainly about her, but we learned a lot from each other. And so that's when it launched. We came up with a bunch of names, and Trevor threw some names in, Taiki threw some names in, Alec Palmer, who's the marketing guy, who's phenomenal, threw some names in, and just it was great. And then it was born, and then of course the pandemic hit, and which was like maybe 2 weeks later when everything just shifted. So we had to call an audible to do everything from home, which was difficult at first, but we figured it out. And it's been an insanely good success ever since. And, you know, we have like merchandise coming out, wine related, non-wine related and stuff, but that's how it was born. And she's become like one of my best friends. And, you know, sometimes we'll finish Cork'd Up, like recording it, and then we'll FaceTime for a couple hours, just catching up on life, because it's just like stuff. But
yeah,
like I get to learn so much from her, and like what she has to deal with, and she asks me about certain things in the media, but that's how it was born. It's been like so much fun.
That's great. I'm guessing you guys probably bond a lot on, because she probably gets a ton of shit as well. Like, oh, you're a woman agent. Like this is Trevor Bauer's agent. I'm saying that. I'm just saying like, that's a weird thing, like a reaction that guys probably have.
She'll send me screenshots, and it's the worst are the YouTube comments. They're the
well, yeah, I mean, you can't go down the YouTube comment rabbit hole. Like I highly recommend against that. Yeah, so we definitely bond over that. We bond over our challenges, but we also bond on overcoming those challenges. And you know, she needs to be a cheerleader for me sometimes, and I need to be a cheerleader for her. And you know, you want to surround yourself with people who are successful and everything like that. But I'm also her comic relief with a lot of the bullshit that she deals with. That's my job. I'm the funny friend, if you will. Yeah, you guys complement each other well. Yeah. What is the go-to wine? I have to ask that question. I'm on a Pinot Noir kick right now. Okay, I've never had it. I actually am turning into a wine guy though, a little bit. Well, I mean, my girlfriend buys like sweet wines, and I'll just have it with her. But like, I also am kind of dabbling in like other. I'm trying to figure out what's right. I'll send you some links to some wines. If you're a sweet wine, I'll help you out. Well, yeah. I'm not necessarily like, I'll drink anything. Like that's kind of just how I am. I'll drink like I don't know, like craft beer one day, and then I'll have wine the next night, or then I'll have like, I don't really care. So just it doesn't have to be sweet. Could be red. Could be whatever. Okay. I'm looking for some recommendations. I got you. Perfect. So another big part of your job is putting yourself out there on all platforms, podcasting, video. I believe you've done some television too, correct? Yeah, I did television for the A's stuff. Yeah, I'll be on television next week. Perfect. There's a nice little teaser for everybody. A's review show on NBC Sports California next Wednesday, fam. Tune in. How have you always been comfortable with doing that, or is that something you had to exercise that muscle a little bit of like how nerve-wracking was it at the beginning? I liked the idea of it. I was like, oh yeah, like I can go on, like, because I'm very comfortable around people, like I don't get nervous. But the first time I was ever on camera, I couldn't tell you how to spell MLB. It was the weirdest thing. It's a fucking foreign object. Strange, yeah. So it was humbling, and then as I got used to it, it was fine. But like the show that they gave me at Cut 4 was just me in my room, like doing it, and that's different too. But when you're on set, it's in the studio,
it's a little bit different, or on assignment. It's just like a different dynamic because you have like so many things like yelling at you or go to this camera, go to that camera. And one time I had to host A's pregame live, and I found out an hour before because the host couldn't make it. And I did okay. I didn't do bad. I had Dave Stewart with me, who was like the perfect person to be there for me. And he was acting like everything was fine. He's like, oh yeah, Jess, you got this. I'm like, do I? It's live. It's live television still.
That's even worse. Yeah.
But live is actually better for me because when I try to do so many reps, I get the first rep done if it's scripted. And then I'm like, oh, I can do better. The next 80 of them after that are not better. So It's different from that dynamic. But it took a while, and I guess actually not that bad. Maybe 6 months. I felt like, cool, I'm normal. I can do it. But I mean, now I'm just used to being in front of this camera, which that's still, you have to teach yourself because you have to look at the camera for like, the VODs when you do it, when you cut them, people aren't going to remember that when you're looking at the camera, you're looking at them, but you're not looking at them because they're right there, and just little things like that. And but I feel like I'm more comfortable on camera in any situation, not a big deal. But it took maybe a year, 2 to really be like that. But now I'm like, I feel like I can do anything, which is kind of cool. Because
so you don't feel like nerves if you're going on set. Does that?
I can tell you that I haven't been on set in like 8 months.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
We'll see. I'll let you know when it happens.
Yeah, I'm just the only reason I ask because I have not been put in that situation. Even when I'm doing a podcast like this, like leading up to it, it's almost like I'm like, it's a good nervous. Like I'm getting ready for a game, like something like that. Like I feel like it kind of gets you in the zone, but at the same time, you have doubts in your head. Am I going to do this right? Am I going to do that right?
Right.
So I guess it kind of translates a little bit.
I actually have good advice for that. So when I first went into a big league clubhouse, I was scared shitless.
Oh, same. Yep.
But they don't know that. I had to walk in there acting like it was my millionth clubhouse I had been in. I'm just like, I almost act like I'm annoyed. I'm like, oh, I have to go talk to Marcus Simeon. Like it's part of an assignment. But inside, Mom is I'm like stoked, but also freaking nervous and stuff like that. But now after the umpteenth times, like cool, like it's part of the job. And then it's asking the question and everything like that. And now I just feel comfortable with it. So you have to like literally fake it till you make it. And that's because I don't have any formal training. I just had to go out and do it. And that's just luckily me being myself, because this is pretty much who I am on Bach Talk. It's who I am on Cork'd Up. It's who I am on set. And even when they told me I was covering the A's full time, they said, be yourself. Like, don't try to be too reportery. And that was probably my most difficult thing, because when you're telling people AJ Puck had surgery, you can't be like chill, laid back Jess. You do have to be a reporter. But if you're too much, my mom will be texting me and be like, what the fuck was that? Like, and I'm like, you're right. But you also have to be concise with your news, right? You can't be talking shit, but also like be a little bit more Jess and laid back. People do come to the show sometimes just to like see me. And like, that sounds stupid, but it just is what it is, So
I'm glad you mentioned first time in a clubhouse, because I went to Fort Myers 2 years ago. And that was my first time covering anything. Never mind like going into a clubhouse. Like that was the first time I've ever traveled, anything. First thing that happens is I go in the clubhouse and all of a sudden it's Mookie Betts just standing right in front of me. And I'm like, oh, great. Like now the nerves are here. Like I'm talking to people before, like I'm not going to get starstruck. I did internships. I've done this. I've done that. Let me tell you, it's nerve wracking. So what advice would you give, like, to build that relationship with a player like that when you're first putting yourself out there to them? Because most of who they talk to are people who have been in the beat for like years and years. So how do you kind of establish that relationship?
You just have to act like that they're people, right? So I would walk up to you and introduce myself. Maybe not shake hands anymore. Now you can be more like chill. You can be like the elbow bump or the bump, because like COVID,
that's a good
like
idea.
You can actually be chill and laid back. So just like that, I just say where you're from, like, hey, like make it like it's an assignment, but you're a human being too. So like the Mike Fiers stuff, I didn't have to ask him about any of the Astros stuff, but if I did, I would have no problem. Like, hey, like I have to ask you this. I had Marcus Simeon on Bach Talk recently. And I was like, hey, like, I'm just going to ask you about free agency stuff, like nothing too crazy, and stick to that too. Sometimes you switch gears because like they'll say something and you're like, oh, tell me more about that. And just like that, like have a conversation with them and then just keep doing that and go from there. I mean, it's no different. Like Rachel helped me with that a lot when it came to reaching out to agents to establish relationships with them. And it's no different. You're just having a conversation and stuff like that. And especially for me, now that everything's over digital and stuff, I have them come on my podcast, and that's an easier intro because I see them in person, like, hey, like, thanks for coming on Bach Talk. Can I ask you some questions? I have to do this for work. But just talk to them. They're normal human beings, and they know it's part of their job too. And they know sometimes you don't want to ask the questions, but you have to. And even preface it with that. One of my colleagues had asked Mike Fiers about it. He goes, hey, I'm so sorry, I have to ask you. Fiers was great about it. He's like, I know, dude, like, no worries.
They get it. Yeah.
They get it. Yeah.
For the most part. I mean, there's definitely some guys who just don't get it at all. Like, we had an issue.
Lucky though. I mean, I also get, like, after a game, if the dude goes 0 for 4, his ERA ballooned to 11.
Know the room. Read the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's great advice too, is read the room. And there's so many unwritten rules too that come with like going in a clubhouse. So those are things that people just breaking into the industry are going to figure out rather quickly.
Don't sit.
Don't talk to the starting pitcher on the day of his, like, all that stuff is stuff you will figure out very quickly in this industry. So you've gone to interview a number of players at this point. I don't know how many, probably too many to count at this point, right?
Yeah, it's actually kind of cool. I'm like, I can't.
That's great.
People ask me who I've met. I have to, or like if I've met a player, I'd have to like think because I don't remember.
If you had to pick one interview or just, I guess, one player, or it could be a coach, it could be anybody actually, who has been your favorite interview to this point, who would it be and why?
I don't know.
I know it's putting you on the spot a little bit, but
it's tough. And so I'm lucky enough where I can't give you a confident answer because there have been good ones. Brandon Belt really surprised me. And not just because he's a Joey Votto fan, but that was cool. Even my episode coming out today was Jerry Hairston Jr. Not a big name, but like he had a lot of stories. He told me like he called Tim Lincecum a hippie and told him to get his hair cut because he talked so much shit. That was his thing.
You know how much Tim Lincecum probably gotten that though? He's probably like, get some new material.
I thought that too. I was like, did he think that you said it or like the umpteenth person in the crowd said it?
Yeah.
And then Joe Montana heckled him. He gave me a Joey Votto story. Anytime I talked to a pitching coach, I could sit or a hitting coach, I could just like listen to them like crazy.
Is that because of sort of the science of pitching and like that type of stuff and just what goes into it?
See stuff that you would never see. And especially like, you know, the way that pitching is these days and like spin rate and stuff like that. Like they just talk about that. Liam Hendrick's always amazing. Always amazing. Because you literally don't know what you're going to get. You don't. Yeah. Who else did I have? Tony Gwynn Jr. is just fantastic just because he sounds like his dad and it just feels like you're getting a big warm hug. I didn't actually interview Vince Scully, but I was on the what's it called? Conference call when he retired. And I remember I was listening to it at a Starbucks and I was like tearing up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you. I think I would.
Yeah. Buck Showalter was really good. Who else did I have? Jabba Chamberlain was, of course, good. You know, I talked to him.
Yep.
So yeah.
What about on the opposite side? Like, has there? You don't have to say names for this one, but have there been guys who have just been jerks, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to talk to that again?
Honestly, no. I think the most trying one was Tony La Russa, but even then, he wasn't. It was my fault. He was like, that's a good question. And I thought he was done answering the question. So I continued and he just kind of kept talking. So, but that was like literally it. I've been really lucky.
What about the most starstruck you've been? And that would come at the beginning of your
Joey
career.
Votto, but even then, like I wasn't that starstruck.
Business as usual.
I was like, I had to do a job and my boss was amazing and let me cover it. He was like, oh, you're going to cover the A's Reds game, which the A's never play the Reds. It was really weird. And I was like, oh, Oh, and so that was really cool. So we talked about Barry Bonds stuff. But I did leave and I shook his hand. I was like, "Hey, I'm a big fan of your work. Thank you so much." And it was cool. Like, but I'm trying to think. I think the most starstruck I might be would be like Cal Ripken Jr. I'm
That's a
trying
big
to get
one.
him on Bach Talk, or Eric Chavez, because Eric Chavez is the reason why I became an A's fan.
Is
So
he? Why is that? Just because
the,
of how
he was
great
the
he was?
first home run I ever saw in person.
Okay. Mine was Carl Everett, and so that's a little different.
Right.
Definitely a different personality.
I guess like personality wise, I don't know if I would.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So writing, podcasting, video, social media, everything you do, you can pick one. What brings you the most joy in your job day to day? Loaded
Um,
question, I know. Does it
I,
just depend on the day, pretty much?
it depends on it's. I would say like recording my podcast bring me a lot of joy only because I love people and I love talking to them and I love seeing them get comfortable as the conversation goes on. So anything with that, like at the beginning, like it just imagine meeting somebody 17 times a day when you're doing like a media day.
Yeah.
I just want them to be comfortable, and that's my ultimate goal. So I think podcasting would probably be, because I mean, if I just had to stop it, like obviously, as you know, you could do so many things on top of podcasting. I can create the
Yep.
VODs, I can write an article, I can post this on television if I need,
Exactly.
social media, all that. But I genuinely like the connection of somebody and getting something unique from them, not just to be like, "Ooh, I got that out of him," but just to know that, or her, but just to know that like they trusted me enough to tell me a cool story warms my heart. Or and it kind of is like a cool thing when I have like a big guest on and people are like, "Oh shit, she like got that guest." Because all the Bach Talk episodes, besides the media days, I've pretty much gotten all those guests on my own. That period.
And that's tough to do. I don't think people realize how difficult the behind the scenes of this is. Even this little thing that I'm doing, which is really just to get reps, I like it's tough to book those interviews, have the courage to follow up if you're getting ghosted. People don't realize you got to follow up. You got to be annoying. You got to
Yeah,
be
you really
all
do.
you have to be all of those things. And if they don't like you, they don't like you, and you don't talk to them. That's pretty much how it goes.
Exactly.
So what other interests do you have? We'll get to baseball in a second, but what other interests do you have? Like what things, if sports didn't exist tomorrow, what do you see yourself getting involved in?
Lately I'm trying to figure out how to utilize my platform a little bit more. I like the idea of like telling people my story and how tough it was, because just saying like I'm a college dropout is just the beginning. I've dealt with a lot of things, so I've always just kind of wanted to like be somewhat of an, not want to say a motivational speaker because I feel like that's silly, but I just want to talk to people about the world. But I did want to be an interior designer when I was growing up. I still like that idea. I love decorating and like look how great my set looks.
Yeah, it does look good. I love
Yeah,
the Votto sign.
of course, of course. My girlfriend, one of my best friends, just moved from California, and that was her license plate, and she gave it to me. She's the reason I
Really?
felt my affinity for Votto, for sure. Yeah, the reason why he's my man crush, if you will. Um,
That's not the
so,
only reason. Let's be honest. I mean,
no,
like
it literally.
that on base percentage. I mean,
Why would you not love that?
exactly.
Like has Moneyball written all over it. Like, stop it.
Yeah. How is he not an A yet?
Because he deserves better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an honest answer.
Deserves more money. But and I mean, eventually I want to be a mom and a wife. And I'm not saying like I would do that over working, but I love social media, so maybe something in that from a different brand perspective. But I love writing too and like creating stuff, so maybe just a writer or something in digital media, some media, because I feel like sports are great, but eventually I want to try something different, so maybe like a crime reporter would be kind of cool.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I love crime. I love
What
true.
other topics are you passionate about when it comes to writing? Because I find it very hard. I love writing when I'm passionate about it. I hate writing when I just don't care about the topic. I'll be honest. My job's writing, but if I have to write about something I genuinely do not care about, that's a very difficult thing to do. So what are some other things that you think that would come easy to you to write about?
um I don't want to reveal too much because I do have some
Okay.
projects in the works,
Ooh, all
but
right.
there are other things that are written written form that I'm passionate about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, that's another good preview. So a little bit of baseball talk now to wrap things up. We mentioned Trevor Bauer earlier. What he's doing with momentum is awesome. I'm a big fan of it.
But you haven't listened to one episode of Cork'd Up.
You know what? That's the first thing I'm going to do after we hang up is I'm going to listen to the first episode.
Listen
Not
to the
first
one where we talk about Kim Ng. We talk about Kim Ng. We talked with her, and Rachel and I talked about Kim Ng, and you'll listen to that episode. It's my favorite one that we've done.
Okay, that's the one I'm listening to then, if that's your recommendation. And I'm sure I'll listen to more too.
Yeah.
So Bauer's doing his thing. I don't see many. I mean, I think there are other players kind of putting themselves out there a little more. Amir Garrett's one.
Everybody's starting a podcast right now. It's for sure.
Yeah, and Amir Garrett has that. He has a Twitch stream. I don't know if you've ever tuned into it. He's another player who's kind of put himself out there. Actually played against him in MLB The Show. Not a big deal though. I beat him in MLB The Show. It doesn't matter. I'm just saying that I beat him in MLB The Show. So no big deal.
Right.
So there are other players doing their part, but what are some things MLB needs to do on its end to make people care about the sport? Because it feels like the players are sort of doing their part. There are players who don't care for the bat flipping and don't care for the just have fun, blah, blah, blah. But what does MLB need to do to compromise a little bit?
I could talk to him blue in the face saying what? Market your players better. But
it's so broad though. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, cause I'll see the MLB account, whoever runs that account's actually good at their job. Like they've been doing well, but what other ways can they do that?
I feel like have a better connection with the players. Like, I know like the people like Trevor, they want to do their own platform because they sometimes don't trust the media, but figure out a way to trust the media. How can we do that? So it starts with us, right? Like that's why I'm trying to be better at my job. So if I do interview like Chris Davis, I want to be like, hey, Chris, is this what you meant by when you said this? Like, you want to make sure you're not just, and it sucks because like sometimes when I'm in the clubhouse, last 2 seasons ago, whenever that was, I want to bring the reader into the clubhouse just for my observations, but not what they've said. What they said is, I want to make sure I'm saying that message correctly. But I think we need better people in the media who aren't just trying to get news breaking. Mm-hmm. I'm not just saying that because I don't break news, but I want that for them. I want them to have a good relationship with us. So MLB sees that, okay, let's start from there. And the only way we can do that is if we're all kind of on the same wavelength. So there's I feel like MLB's here, the Trevors are here, I'm here. And it's like we all need to kind of work together, not too closely. Trevor needs to do his own thing. MLB needs to do their own thing. But like remind yourself how sexy baseball is, how fun it is. And Cut 4 can only do so much. Cut 4 can only do so much. I can only do so much. Pitching Ninja can only do so much. So it's just like from that dynamic. So we need kind of like the clutch points type of vibe with an MLB and just like the weirdness. Cool. Great slash line. Cool. Chris Bassett's slow dropping curve makes me weak in the knees. But why does it make you weak in the knees? What is he doing to make you go weak in the knees with that pitch? And stuff like that. And just, more pop culture involved too. Like, tell me what Bryce Harper's cleats are. Where did he get that from? Or, how are they able to still chew when there's a no tobacco or like, stuff like that. Like that's the stuff that I care about without, getting too much in their personal lives. And they do a good job, but I think we need to have a better way of making it so they can trust us to market them better. Like I want to be able to be like, hey, these cleats are good, but tell me about them so I can tweet it out.
For me, the big thing is they for whatever reason, they do not like when media, or even if you're not in the media, they just don't like their clips, their highlights shared. That's something that's been going on for years now. And they haven't really lightened up on it where other leagues sort of have, like the copyright and everything. Like you'll get a notice in 20 minutes after posting a baseball clip that, hey, it's getting taken down. That automatically is limiting people from seeing these awesome highlights or just these awesome moments that are going on in the sport. So that's kind of my thing is we do everything we can to make the sport fun, but you're sort of limiting our ability to show it to everybody else. And we're the media, so we should be able to do that. But for example, NBC Sports Bay Area, you guys own, like you air the games. NBC Sports Boston does not air Red Sox games. So if we were to,
yeah.
so if we were to do that, we would immediately get a takedown notice, and that kind of sucks. And I know that's because more of a Nesson thing in that kind of example, but in general, you just can't share clips. And I think for me, anyways, that's the big thing. And I don't know personally how we do that, how we get them to be like, hey, maybe you benefit your game better if you do it this way.
I don't know either, fam. But I agree.
Talk to them.
I agree. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a tough. Nobody knows because no one's been able to figure it out. MLB hasn't been able.
I was like still tweeting out a bunch of like videos that I saw like after I left Cut 4, and I think they kind of were lenient with me just because I had a relationship. But
yeah,
then I got in trouble from a certain other place because it wasn't fair that I was allowed to and others weren't.
I see.
I don't know. Work hard. Maybe people like you.
Yeah, maybe. Obviously, you cover the A's and the Giants, which we've already talked about. And I don't know if you've covered this topic on Bach Talk. If you have, I apologize. But how do you see these two teams approaching this offseason? And do you have any personal predictions, I guess, for signings and what direction they'll head in?
Giants just need pitching.
Yes.
They desperately need pitching. That feels like every team desperately needs pitching because like
they really need it.
Yeah, they really, really do. So I feel like, Gausman accepting that qualifying offer was certainly a help, but like, look at all the positives, right? Buster Posey should be back. He's not going to be a game changer, but I think they need that veteran presence back. Crawford's always hot at shortstop. Belt, you never really know what you're going to get with him. Maybe he'll have another hot season. You never know. Alex Dickerson, however, he's coming back. This was his first off season where he didn't have to rehab an injury. He told me this recently, and I was like, oh my gosh. And when A. Dick is on, watch out. And Mike Yastrzemski could literally just be a half-ass player and be amazing. Dude's hitting bombs with 2 strikes on him, ice in his veins. Cool.
What a year he had, huh?
Yes, they definitely need pitching for sure. And Farhan Zaidi's been talking a lot about these young guys. From the beginning, he was talking about these young guys coming into the season. But they also have a strong so some of these younger right-handed pitchers are going to be coming up through the ranks to pay attention to them, but their pitching staff or the pitching coaching staff, I should say, is really good. You have Andrew Bailey on there, and that pitching staff added a few more miles per hour velocity on Drew Smiley, who was able to turn a $4 million contract into an $11 million contract with the Braves. So I feel like if they get the right guy, they have maybe like a diamond in the rough type of deal. Like, I don't think they're going to get Trevor Bauer. I would love it. There's actually some good vibes about that just because she grew up a Giants fan. The Rockies and the Diamondbacks are not going to be that great. So there's a chance for the Giants to make it interesting. Don't think they're going to win the NL West, but we'll see. So I think if they concentrate on the pitching, which obviously they are, they get a guy that they can kind of add some speed onto that velocity, or even a guy who can really take advantage of some of those secondary pitches, like something might happen. Like, they're definitely not a team that you need to sleep on. That's for sure. As far as the A's, Lord, I don't know.
So you never know with the A's. That's what makes them so fun to follow. So every year I make predictions when it comes to these teams, and they're the one team that I look at their rotation, I look at their lineup, and I'm like, you know what? I don't fucking know. I'm gonna put them like second or third place, and I hope that works. Like, I genuinely do not know, because they're not household names outside of like Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, like Chris Davis.
Even they're not really household.
Not really, yeah.
Right. So I feel like they just need to kind of build off of what they had, because they brought Tony Kemp back, which is interesting because that second base position, I feel like La Stella needs to come back, but he just absolutely has to. And Billy Beane made it very clear that's one of their priorities, is to bring him back. And the Marcus Semien thing, I have no idea. I think is
no
down
one knows.
here.
Yeah.
And I just asked him, and he said, that was not enough time in 2020. It was not enough time. And I truly believe that. And especially for him, who was coming off a strong 2019, but teams are asking if he'd possibly move to third base. So that might actually benefit him away from the A's. I don't know, but there's some shortstops that are out, like Andrelton Simmons, who's an interesting thought. But I feel like they would have to go get somebody to replace him.
Right.
But they want him back. He's bigger than just what he does on the field. He's a big guy in the Oakland community from that dynamic. But maybe one more veteran pitcher. I kind of like maybe a Corey Kluber would be kind of interesting.
So I have Kluber going to the A's in my, like I wrote an article, all predictions. I have Kluber going to the A's. He has to prove it this year. I mean, he's coming off an injury. He pitched 1 inning.
Or Lance Lynn. That's
another good one. That's a nice fit. I
love that idea. They need a veteran presence. I don't think Mike Fiers is going to be back. If he is, I don't see him being part of that starting rotation. But Sean Manaea better have a better season. Frankie Montas, if he's on it, he's going to be talked about for an AL Cy Young Award possibility.
You can say the same thing about Luzardo. Yeah,
Luzardo definitely a possible Cy Young candidate for me. And then it'd be nice to the Chris Bassett situation. We'll see. He was our most dependable pitcher last season to watch, and he was vying for a starting spot just in the rotation, and he ended up being the most dependable. And I tell you, that curve mama loves. So just from that dynamic, but hitting wise, I think they're good. We're gonna have Chappie back, which is good. And I say we because I love watching him play. We as a society get Matt Chapman
absolutely
back. Ollie's going to be back. And then you have, like I said, Tony Kemp signed, but Sean Murphy, watch out for him, dude. That guy has so much power.
I was going to say, he can hit. And Bob Melvin's a former catcher himself. So just watching him, he's just like a proud dad. And so outfield is going to be, we're going to see, because Robbie Grossman is a free agent. And I feel like when he's on it, he's a game changer. He absolutely is. And then we got Pinder back too. And the guy, you can put him anywhere and he's good. So I'm not worried about them. It'll be interesting to see what the front office does. Yes,
as it always is.
Yeah, exactly. So outside of the A's and the Giants, are there any, the way you see the dominoes falling for the rest of the league, any predictions for big names going to certain places? I know none of us really know anything right now, but what destinations do you have your eye on for some of the biggest free agents out there?
I got to be honest, I don't know. I would like George Springer to possibly come to the Giants would be kind of cool. But I foresee him probably staying with the Astros, I would assume.
Really? Okay.
I really do. Just because they didn't do a lot. They didn't have any of the non-tender stuff happen. So I don't know what that exactly means, but that could mean something from that. JT Realmuto is kind of I have no idea. I mean,
yeah, the Phillies, I guess, are out on him. So it's like now
always benefit from a veteran catcher with power, period.
Yeah.
Period.
He's far and away the most valuable player on the market. You could say Bauer too, but those two guys, it's 1A, 1B, then boom, everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as Lindor goes, I know he's not a free agent, but like his situation is just weird. But I feel like he would have to move because that market next season is just awkward.
The writing's on the wall with him for sure.
Yeah. Honestly though, I don't know. I'm like the worst with predictions, but I don't think we're going to have anything happen until spring training starts. I don't think Trevor Bauer or George Springer. I mean, I feel like George Springer might get a situation earlier, but I feel like Bauer is going to wait to the end because it looks like the starting pitching market's pretty good right now. They gave Minor great deal with the Royals.
Yep.
And they're just lucky to have me, just a good dude from that perspective. But it looks like it's kind of creating something. And I did ask Luba, I was like, do you agree that it's a good starting pitcher market right now? And she agreed. So.
Well, that's always a good sign when you have the agent saying that.
Yes.
Where's he going? You have the inside info.
I don't care where he goes. I just want him to be happy.
That's a cop-out answer. Do you don't have a prediction?
It's not a cop-out answer. I genuinely want him to be happy because I know the things that Rachel and him are going through right now. I want him and her to be happy. That's all I care about.
I heard San Diego is a pretty nice place.
San Diego is a nice place.
Yeah. So we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Not just saying. Player you're most excited to watch in 2021. You can't say Joey Votto. Who is the guy you have your eye on as the guy everyone should have their eye on?
Ramon Laureano.
Interesting. Okay. Why is that?
How is that interesting?
Well, it's just not a guy. I mean, we just talked about the A's they don't have exactly a roster of guys that you have on your mind all the time.
Then pay attention to Ramon Laureano.
I do. And you know what? He didn't look great in the fight against the Astros entire bench, but he did look good other than that this year. So
I mean, he took on the whole Astros team.
Well, first off, it was also that guy's fault. That guy who was kind of doing this. I know this is a podcast, so people.
So he was also
just
talking shit about Ramon Laureano's mother, which you don't do.
That's not good. Yeah, you don't do that. No, all
Don't
jokes
you mind?
aside, it's a
Dan's
good pick.
saint.
Yeah, all jokes
Justin,
aside.
I gotta get going soon because my shit's about to start.
That's fine. I'm about to wrap this up anyway.
Okay.
I really appreciate you coming on, Jess. This was a lot of fun. Hopefully we can have you on, or I'll have you on soon. Have a great rest of your day. And again, thank you for everything.
Not a problem at all. Thanks, Justin.